The stretch of pavement known as Archer Avenue cuts through the darkness of the night like a scar upon the land. It winds its way through the landscape of Justice, Illinois, just outside the bustling city of Chicago. Streetlights flicker overhead, casting long and twisting shadows that seem to dance upon the asphalt. Locals know this road well, and many avoid driving it alone once the sun dips below the horizon. There is a heaviness here that hangs in the humid air, a feeling of being watched from the tree line. This is not just a road, it is a corridor for the restless dead who refuse to leave this world behind. The silence is broken only by the hum of tires. Every pair of headlights that cuts through the fog risks illuminating something that should not exist. This particular highway holds the title of being one of the most haunted roadways in the entire United States. It is an artery that connects the living city to the silent finality of Resurrection Cemetery. The graveyard itself is a massive expanse of land filled with cold stone monuments and mausoleums that house thousands of souls. But the iron gates of this burial ground are not enough to keep every spirit contained within its hallowed earth. There are stories whispered in local taverns and police stations, alike about a figure that walks the shoulder of the road. She is a lonely traveler, forever seeking a ride that she will never truly complete. Her presence turns the blood to ice in the veins of even the bravest drivers. The legend of Resurrection Mary is more than just a campfire tale for the people of the greater Chicago area. It is a part of the cultural fabric woven into the history of the region since the 1930s. She is the quintessential phantom hitchhiker. Yet she stands apart because of the sheer volume of credible witnesses who have encountered her. These are not merely stories of a white mist or a floating orb, but detailed accounts of a solid human form. Men have spoken to her and felt the touch of her cold hand and looked into her blue eyes. She appears as a young woman of flesh and blood until the impossible moment when she ceases to be. The terror lies in how real she seems. To understand the ghost one must first understand the era that birthed this tragic spirit. The 1930s were a time of hardship and stark reality for the people of Illinois. The Great Depression had left its mark on society, creating a world where simple joys were cherished deeply. Ballroom dancing was a popular escape for the young people of that generation. Places like the O. Henry Ballroom and the Willowbrook Ballroom were beacons of light and music in otherwise dark times. It was in this atmosphere of desperate celebration that a young girl named Mary spent her final night among the living. She wanted nothing more than to dance and forget the troubles of the world for a few precious hours. The story officially begins on a cold winter night when the wind howled off Lake Michigan and chilled the bones of anyone outside. Mary had gone out for an evening of dancing with her boyfriend at the O. Henry Ballroom. The music was loud and the energy was high. couples swirled across the wooden floor. She wore a beautiful white dress and dancing shoes, ready to enjoy the night. However, the evening took a sour turn as the couple began to argue. Voices were raised and tempers flared in the heated atmosphere of the dance hall. Mary felt a surge of pride and anger that made her want to escape. She decided she would rather face the freezing cold walk home than stay another minute. She stormed out of the ballroom and into the biting chill of the winter night, leaving the warmth and safety behind her. The road was dark, and the snow was beginning to pile up on the sides of Archer Avenue. She pulled her coat tight around her shivering frame and began the long trek up the road. Her breath came in white clouds of steam as she marched with determination. Mary was young and headstrong, believing herself invincible, as many young people do. She did not know that death was speeding towards her in the darkness. She was walking along the shoulder of the road, a dangerous place for a pedestrian in dark clothing. The visibility was poor, and the road was slick with ice. A vehicle came tearing down the road, appearing out of the gloom with blinding headlights. The driver, perhaps distracted, or perhaps impaired by drink, did not see the girl in time. There was a sickening thud as metal collided with the fragile human body. Mary was thrown violently from the road, her life extinguished in a brutal instant of pain and confusion. The driver did not stop to render aid or check on the victim. The taillights simply faded into the distance, leaving the broken body of Mary lying in the snow. She died alone on the side of Archer Avenue, with the music of the ballroom a distant memory. Her life was cut short, but her spirit was not ready to leave. Her parents were devastated when the news reached them, and they buried their beloved daughter in Resurrection Cemetery, wearing her white dress. They hoped she would find peace in the afterlife, but it seems that peace was not her destiny. The sheer suddenness of her death and the emotional turmoil of her final moments tethered her to the location. She had unfinished business, specifically the walk home, that she never completed. The trauma of the hit and run left a stain on the location that time has failed to wash away. Soon after her burial, the reports began to trickle in. Drivers claimed to see a young woman walking alone in the dark, wearing a dress far too thin for the weather. The first widely reported encounter that solidified the legend happened in the winter of 1939. A young man named Jerry Palus was attending a dance at the Liberty Grove and Hall near Archer Avenue. It was a lively night, but Jerry found his attention drawn to a striking blonde woman standing alone. She was beautiful, with an ethereal quality that made her stand out from the other girls in the hall. She wore a white dress and seemed somewhat out of place, yet undeniably captivating. Jerry approached her and asked for a dance, and she accepted. As he took her hand, he noticed that her skin was incredibly cold. It was the chill of someone who had been outside in the winter air for hours. They danced for hours that night, and Jerry was entranced by her quiet demeanor. She moved with grace, but spoke very little about herself or where she came from. Whenever the music stopped, she would stand close to him, as if seeking warmth. Jerry felt a protective instinct towards this mysterious girl named Mary. When the dance hall began to close down, he offered to drive her home. She accepted his offer, but asked specifically to be driven down Archer Avenue. Jerry found it odd that she was so specific about the route, but he agreed. They got into his car and headed out into the dark night. The heater in the car did little to warm the icy atmosphere she brought with her. As they drove down the desolate stretch of Archer Avenue, Mary sat in the passenger seat, staring out the window. She seemed anxious as they passed certain landmarks along the road. Jerry tried to make conversation, but her answers were short and distant. As they approached the gates of Resurrection Cemetery, her behavior changed abruptly. She became frantic and demanded that he stop the car immediately. Jerry was confused, but he pulled the vehicle over to the side of the road near the cemetery entrance. Before the car had even come to a complete halt, Mary opened the door. She stepped out into the night air and moved towards the large iron gates. Jerry watched in disbelief as the girl he had spent the entire evening with ran towards the locked cemetery gates. He expected her to stop or turn back, but she did neither. To his absolute horror, she did not climb over the gates or squeeze through them. Instead, she seemed to pass right through the solid iron bars, as if she were made of smoke. One moment, she was there, a solid figure in a white dress, and the next she was gone. The space in front of the cemetery was empty. Jerry sat in his car, with his heart pounding in his chest, unable to comprehend what he had just witnessed. He got out and checked the gates, finding them locked tight. The experience left Jerry Palus shaken to his very core, and he could not keep the story to himself. He went to the address she had vaguely mentioned earlier in the night. A woman answered the door who looked weary and sorrowful. When Jerry described the girl he had met and danced with, the woman became visibly upset. She told him that he had described her daughter perfectly, but that her daughter had been dead for years. She showed him a photograph of a young girl named Mary. Jerry felt the blood drain from his face as he recognized the girl from the dance hall. It was the same face, the same hair, and the same dress. Over the decades that followed, the story of Jerry Palus became the cornerstone of the Resurrection Mary legend. But he was far from the only man to encounter the phantom hitchhiker. Taxi drivers became frequent witnesses to the phenomenon throughout the 1940s and 50s. A cab driver would spot a young woman hitchhiking on Archer Avenue, usually near the ballroom. She always looked distressed and in need of help. Being a professional, the driver would pull over and let the young lady into the back seat. She would ask to be taken to a location further down the road, often giving vague directions. The driver would would glance in the rearview mirror and see her sitting there plain as day. As the taxi approached the vicinity of Resurrection Cemetery, the passenger would often become silent. When the driver turned around to ask for clarification on the destination, the back seat would be empty. The shock of seeing an empty seat where a person had just been sitting caused many drivers to swerve or slam on their brakes. There was no way for a passenger to exit a moving vehicle without being seen or hearing the door open. Yet time and again, she vanished into thin air, leaving the driver terrified and confused. Some drivers even reported the meter was still running, recording the fare for a passenger who no longer existed in the physical realm. These encounters followed a strict and terrifying pattern that defied logical explanation. The woman was always described in the same manner, wearing a white party dress and dancing shoes. She was always young blonde and blue-eyed, with a beauty that seemed timeless. The location of the pickup and the vanishing point were consistent with the area between the ballroom and the cemetery. It was as if she was stuck in a loop, forever trying to complete that final journey home. The sheer number of reports from reliable witnesses forced the local police to take notice. Calls would come in about a girl walking dangerously on the road, only for the responding officers to find no one. In the 1970s, a new layer was added to the legend that provided physical evidence of the haunting. A traveler passing the cemetery late at night claimed to see a girl locked inside the gates. Thinking someone had been accidentally trapped after closing hours, he called the police. Officers arrived at the scene and found no girl inside the cemetery. However, upon inspecting the bronze bars of the gate, they found something chilling. 2 bars had been bent apart, as if by immense strength, and there were handprints burned into the metal. The marks looked as though a pair of hands had grasped the bars. With intense heat searing the texture of skin into the bronze, the cemetery caretakers attempted to remove the disturbing marks from the gate. They used blowtorches and wire brushes to clean the metal, trying to erase the handprints. But no matter what they did, the image of the hands would return, or the discoloration would persist. It was as if the metal itself had been scarred by a supernatural force. The bent bars became a local attraction, drawing curiosity seekers and ghost hunters from all over the country. Many believed these were the handprints of Mary attempting to escape her confinement in the cemetery. The physical proof added a weight to the legend that mere stories could not achieve. The question of exactly who Resurrection Mary was in life has occupied researchers for decades. While many believe the story is a composite of several tragedies, there are specific candidates. Mary Bregovy is a name often cited by historians of the paranormal. She died in a car accident in 1934 while returning from a dance. Her description matches the ghost perfectly, and she was buried in Resurrection Cemetery, Another candidate is Anna Norkus, who died in a car crash on her way home from a dance hall in 1927. Both girls were young, beautiful, and had their lives cut tragically short on that dark highway. Regardless of her true name, the spirit has become a permanent resident of Archer Avenue. The winter months seem to be the most active time for sightings, especially when snow is on the ground. Perhaps the cold weather triggers the memory of that freezing night when she died. Drivers report seeing a solitary figure walking along the side of the road with no coat. When Good Samaritans stop to offer a coat or a ride, she turns to look at them with sad eyes. Sometimes she accepts the ride only to vanish. Other times, she simply fades away into the mist before the car even comes to a stop. There are chilling accounts of men who claim to have struck the woman with their cars. A driver will be traveling down Archer Avenue when suddenly a figure darts out in front of them. The driver slams on the brakes, but feels the sickening impact of the car hitting a body. They rush out of the vehicle, expecting to find a gruesome scene and a dead pedestrian. Instead, they find the road empty and silent. There is no body, no blood, and no sign of impact on the car. The psychological trauma of thinking one has killed a person, only to find nothing is a torment Mary inflicts upon the living. One particular story involves a man who saw a woman walking in a soaking wet dress during a thunderstorm. He felt pity for her and pulled over to let her in. She sat in the passenger seat, shivering and dripping water onto the upholstery. He handed her his jacket to keep warm. When they arrived at the cemetery, she jumped out of the car and ran through the gates, still wearing his jacket. The man waited for her to return, but she never did. Days later, he went to the cemetery office to inquire about her. He found his jacket folded neatly on top of a grave marked with the name Mary. The jacket was dry and warm. The Willowbrook Ballroom, which was formerly the O. Henry Ballroom, burned down in recent years. This tragic fire destroyed the physical location where Mary spent her final happy moments. Some paranormal enthusiasts wondered if the destruction of the ballroom would end the hauntings. However, sightings on the road have continued, suggesting her attachment is to the journey rather than the destination. The loss of the building only deepened the sense of loss that permeates the legend. The music has stopped forever, but the dancer remains out on the road. She is a relic of a bygone era, drifting through the modern world. Skeptics argue that the road is simply dangerous, and the stories are a way to warn young people. They say the mist from the nearby forest plays tricks on the eyes of tired drivers. Archer Avenue is indeed a winding road, with poor lighting in certain sections. Pareidolia, the tendency for the brain to see human shapes in random patterns, can explain some sightings. But skepticism fails to account for the detailed interactions reported by credible witnesses. It does not explain why so many people describe the exact same woman down to the details of her hairstyle and dress. The phenomenon of resurrection, Mary taps into a deep human fear of death and the unfinished life. She represents the tragedy of youth cut short and the desire to return to the living world. Her story is not one of a vengeful monster, but of a confused and lonely spirit. She does not attack people or cause harm intentionally. She simply wants to go home. This sorrowful nature makes her a sympathetic figure in the pantheon of American ghosts. People leave flowers at the gates of the cemetery, not just for their loved ones, but for the phantom girl who walks the road. Modern technology has not dispelled the legend, but rather it has given it new life. Ghost hunting groups visit Archer Avenue with electromagnetic field detectors and spirit boxes. They record electronic voice phenomena in the woods near the cemetery, hoping to catch her voice. Some claim to have recorded a female voice, whispering, "Help me," or asking for a ride. Photos taken near the gates often show strange anomalies like orbs or mists that resemble a human shape. The internet allows these pieces of evidence to spread, keeping the mystery alive for a new generation. The atmosphere around Resurrection Cemetery at night is undeniably heavy and oppressive. The bronze gates stand as a silent sentinel, guarding the thousands of souls within. Even without the ghost story, the location commands a sense of respect and unease. The streetlights cast an orange glow that fails to penetrate the deep shadows of the graveyard. Cars speed by rarely slowing down, as if the drivers are afraid of what they might see. It is a place where the barrier between the living and the dead feels incredibly thin. The air is always colder near those iron bars. Some locals claim that Mary is not the only spirit haunting Archer Avenue, but she is certainly the most famous. The area is known as the Archer Avenue Triangle due to the high concentration of paranormal activity. There are stories of phantom monks and gray ladies in the nearby woods, but Mary remains the queen of the road, the central figure in a landscape of high strangeness. Her legend draws people to the area, fueling a small tourism industry of ghost tour and haunted history walks. She has become an icon of Chicago folklore. The endurance of the resurrection, Mary legend, speaks to the power of oral tradition in the modern age. Despite the advance of science and the cynicism of the digital world, this story survives. It is passed down from grandmothers to grandchildren, and from veteran cab drivers to rookies. It serves as a rite of passage for teenagers getting their driver's licenses in the area. Driving down Archer Avenue at night is a test of courage. Every shadow looks like a girl in a white dress, and every flicker of light looks like a signal. The psychological impact on those who have seen her is profound and lasting. Jerry Palus remained convinced of what he saw until his dying day, never wavering in his account. Taxi drivers who lost their phantom fares often refused to drive that route again at night. The experience creates a crack in their reality, a realization that the world is stranger than they thought. It is a haunting that lingers in the mind long after the figure has vanished. To look into the eyes of the dead is something that changes a person forever. There is a lesson in the story of Resurrection Mary about the suddenness of mortality. She went out for a night of joy and never returned home. It reminds us that life is fragile and can be extinguished in a heartbeat. Her restless wandering is a testament to the attachments we form to this life. She cannot let go of the night she died, and so she reenacts it for eternity. We tell her story to remember her, and perhaps to warn ourselves to cherish every moment. If you ever find yourself driving down Archer Avenue on a cold winter night, keep your eyes on the road. You might see a flash of white in your headlights near the gates of the cemetery. You might see a young woman thumbing for a ride, her blonde hair matted with snow. Your instinct will be to stop and help her because she looks so real and so lost. But remember the stories and remember the impossible nature of her existence. She is a memory caught in a loop, a tragedy that refuses to fade. Do not unlock your doors, and do not invite the cold into your vehicle. If you look into her eyes, you might see the infinite sadness of a soul trapped between worlds. She will ask to go home, but she can never get there. She will vanish, leaving you with only the chill in the air and the pounding of your heart. The road belongs to her now, and the living are just passing through her domain. Drive on and do not look back at the iron gates. The legend of Resurrection Mary stands as one of the most compelling ghost stories in American history. It combines historical tragedy with recurring modern encounters in a way that few other legends do. She is not a monster hiding under the bed. She is a girl standing on the side of the road. She is familiar, yet terrifying, real, yet impossible. As long as Archer Avenue winds its way past that cemetery, she will continue to walk. And as long as she walks, we will continue to tell her story in the dark.